Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan, and my guest today is Bill Cusato, a senior director at Source Advisors. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Rick.
So, Bill, tell me all about Source Advisors. What is Source Advisors?
Yeah, we are a specialty tax service provider. We offer a range of services that help people to pay less in taxes, and they seem to like it, Rick. Yeah.
Who wouldn't? Less is better.
Always. Yeah. So our services include cost segregation and energy incentives focused on obviously the commercial real estate industry, and also R&D services for those companies that conduct research and development, and also LIFO services for companies that carry large inventories, especially in inflationary times. And we've been doing ERC studies as well for clients that withstood the pandemic and continue to employ their people. So we have a range of services. Today, though, we'll focus on commercial real estate and cost segregation and energy incentives. Excuse me. And we began. Well, Source Advisors had acquired Bedford Cost Segregation almost 2 years ago now. Bedford was, we believe, the largest cost seg provider in the nation at the time. Source had a smaller cost seg practice at the time, but offered these other services, which blended very well with cost segregation. They acquired us, and we've teamed forces. And so obviously we believe that we are still the largest cost seg provider in the nation. Our company is based in Fort Worth, Texas, but our cost seg division is based pretty much in the operations are national, of course, but focused pretty much here started pretty much here in the New England area. So we have a huge foothold. We have a tremendous set of clients here in the Boston area and through New England and through the Northeast and around the country as well. So that is who we are.
And not to mention that, Bill, you've been in the industry for 18 years or longer.
Thanks for pointing that out, Rick. Yeah. Yeah. So 18
That's
years.
Nothing to be ashamed of, Bill.
No, I've been here 18 years because I love it. Yeah. So I deal with great projects, huge variety of projects, anything from a 2 million square foot Amazon facility to a guy that owns a few Dunkin' Donuts, right? And everything in between. It's professional sports teams, owners in the area and so forth. So every day is a little bit different, but we help our clients to save a ton of money in taxes, and they seem to like that, right? So it's 18 years has flown by, of course, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky to have found this company.
So how did this all come about, a cost segregation? When did that originate?
Well, I'll start back in the olden days for guys that might remember 1986, but through 1986, you could actually depreciate a property, and you could and CPAs would break out certain pieces of the property and give it a shorter life, because not the entire property is not going to last, is going to have the same useful life. So back then it was very ad hoc and it was very unscientific, and you might have a CPA sitting around a conference table saying, "What do you think the life of a window should be?" So that's how I understand it. But back in '86, when the investment tax credit went away, so did this component depreciation. Excuse me. It came back in 1997. There was a case called Hospital Corp of America, and they're installing CAT scan machines and MRI machines and all of this other equipment that that had a 5-year depreciable life, so it could be written off faster than the building itself. And so the challenge was, well, if the equipment can be written off of 5 years, why not the stepped up electrical and the stepped up plumbing and the stepped up acoustical systems and the reinforced floors and things like that, and the ventilation? Why shouldn't those be depreciated over the same 5 years? separate from the building, and they won. And that opened the floodgates. And my understanding is that Scott's Paper Company was next, and they're spinning wheels to cut logs into paper products and so forth. And they've got a lot of, especially a lot of electrical and water in the process. So there's a lot of plumbing. So they brought other things to the table that were acceptable as being accelerated or having a shorter life. And I understand there were over 200 challenges. Then they kind of brought definition to what is a building and what are these special purpose components that should be depreciated more quickly. The IRS in 2004, the IRS kind of threw their arms up and said, "Wait a minute, we're seeing all these different kinds of depreciation schedules with all of these shorter lives," and they put out a 110-page audit technique guide. This ATG said, "Here are the definitions of what is a building and what is special purpose." They laid kind of the groundwork for it. And actually, they wrote it for their own agents to be able to qualify a good depreciation schedule from a bad one, I guess. And that became kind of the beginning of this industry of cost segregation. They also identified the quality of the individuals who would do these studies. So they said it should be performed by an engineer, and it should be performed with using certain methodologies and so forth. And so it really spawned this industry. That was back in 2004. So that is really the history. And since then, it's pretty much SOP for most commercial property owners that are in a profitable position, right? Either for profit or making a profit and have a tax liability. It's pretty SOP for most of them to use cost segregation studies.
So, there's the benefit of having cost segregation is obviously you're going to save a ton of money if you do this study. But now you have to be like on top of your game every year because the tax rules change hourly, probably.
Yeah, they do. They change quite a bit, but fundamentals are still there. There are some variations from year to year, from president to president, right? But God's sake. So I'm just going to give you an example. It's a passive investor buys a CVS and spends $8 million. About a quarter of that, or $2 million, would be allocated to land and not depreciable. So we've got $6 million left as the depreciable basis. Our study would identify, we're seeing in CVSs, for example, about a third of the property, including building and grounds, but a third can be depreciated or accelerated to shorter depreciable lives. And the way the current tax code, well, through 22 said that so a third, by the way, of $6 million, let's say it's $2 million, right? And that can be depreciated in the first year. Imagine that. So you buy $8 million CVS and you pick up a $2 million deduction under depreciation in the first year. It's amazing. Now in 23, that 100% bonus depreciation has dropped to 80% bonus depreciation, but it's still a fabulous number. So what would that be? That would be one. So now same scenario, it would be a $1.6 million write-off in the first year. So that's what the impact is. So it's amazing. So cost segregation is a tax strategy, but it leads to the event that people buy properties as a tax strategy to have that write-off. So it's very, very lucrative. Obviously, different property types have different yields, but we'll talk about that later, I think. So
this is something that everyone should know about, because if they don't know about it, they're definitely losing out on a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody who, again, is for profit and who has a tax liability and intends to hold their property, right, for at least 3 years, or anybody who especially has renovations upcoming, because renovations mean that you're disposing of certain, roofs and porches and doors and windows and HVAC components and things like that. So a study places values on those to support write-offs of disposed or discarded assets. So I think anybody who has a tax liability should at least look into cost segregation and not just the upfront study, but the long-term effect of the study as well.
Now, you talk a lot about the studies. So, when someone is interested in doing this, is that what you are talking about as a study? You go into their place of business and look at what they're.
Correct. You're correct. If you called me, Rick, and said I've got a property, I bought an apartment building in East Boston, and I spent $4 million on that property, is it worth doing a study? We would generate for you at no charge an estimate of benefit. The estimate of benefit is going to tell you what we can provide you with in the first year for accelerated depreciation. And then also, obviously, whatever is not accelerated, the base building components are depreciated over the life of the 27 and a half year or 39-year lives. So important point here, we don't create new depreciation. We simply front load depreciation so you don't have to wait for it for over 27 and a half or 39 years. So we're front loading depreciation. This is a timing thing, and it's meant to preserve cash. It really dates back to the old Reaganomics. Remember the supply side he used to talk about? Keep money in the hands of the people that will spend it and keep the economy pumping, right? And that's
Right.
really what this is. So our clients are, we have these cowboys for clients that, have a lot of guts and they invest in these properties and, as you know, and so we make it good, we make it better for them, we make it worthwhile for them to get an immediate benefit, for their trouble and for their investment.
So, what case would be that the cost segregation wouldn't be able to apply? Let's say on an appreciation level or a refurbishing level, something on that. Would there be that kind of a case that it wouldn't apply?
Yeah. So the first thing is, again, if the client is not incurring a tax liability, then it wouldn't make sense to do a study, at least not that year, maybe the following year or the year after that on that same property. But that would be a reason why somebody would not do a study. Institutional investors do not do studies because much of the institutional money is in a no tax status. REITs don't do studies because their charter is to redistribute their profit. They don't want losses. They want. So I'm not sure I actually fully understand why, but REITs do not do cost seg studies. And so, yeah, but otherwise, if you're making money and off a property or otherwise, and you have this tax liability and you don't want to write a big fat check, that's where we come in. Again, we preserve cash.
Now, sustainability, which is a big term now in commercial real estate, as well, probably as well as residential, but sustainability makes that property, it gives it a lot of value. I would assume, and it also saves quite a bit in energy as well as some of the other effects that sustainability gives a property owner. What kind of tax benefits? I know they get tax benefits, but is there a even better when they call in a cost segregation as part of it?
Good question. So as a sideline to these cost seg studies, as we're dealing with commercial property owners, for developers and the people that that embark on new construction projects or major rehab projects, there are incentives out there to make it better, to make it worthwhile to install energy efficient systems. Along with cost segregation, we also offer a service that provides the IRS 45L benefit. So that's for multifamily properties, and it offers up until 22. It offered a $2,000 credit per unit, which is different than a deduction. The $2,000 credit per unit. So for every unit that met eligible standards for energy efficiency. So we'd go to each unit, or we go to a sampling of the units, and we do a blower test and a duct test, if that means anything to the people listening, and then go through the drawings and plans to validate the energy efficiency and the equipment used. It could generate a $2,000 credit per unit. So for a 200 unit property, the 45L could lead to, if every unit qualifies, and most do through 22, that would be a $400,000 credit, which is like cash, right, in the world of the IRS. That has changed in 2023. The credit has gone up to $5,000. However, there are new conditions which include prevailing wage and Energy Star compliance. So we don't have the bandwidth here to go through all of that, but prevailing wage is what you would think it would be. It's fundamentally union wages, and Energy Star is not just the appliances, but it goes deeper than that. Projects will need to be certified for Energy Star compliance, even in the design stage. So it will be more difficult to get the 45L credit. The other service that on a look back basis, we can offer that $2,000 credit per unit. So if I were a developer of multifamily properties over the last 3 years, I would certainly take advantage, because it's going to get a little more tricky in the future to take advantage, but more reward. The second program that we offer is called IRS 179D. It's could be multifamily or any kind of commercial property, and it offers a credit up through the end of 22. It offered $1.84 deduction per square foot. So that's a nice benefit. So that would be based on 3 components. That would be the building lighting system, the building HVAC system, and the building envelope. So if those were compliant and exceeded local standards, you'd get that $1.84 per square foot. In 2023, again, with the latest tax act, the qualifications went up, and now prevailing wage and Energy Star are factors with 179D as well. So it will be more difficult to qualify for those. You can go back 3 years and qualify if so I would hope that any of your listeners that have done new construction in the last number of years would go back and take advantage, because it is a good benefit.
Now, how many years back did you say it could go?
3 years, yeah. 3 years, yeah. And one more thing, and that is, I don't know if there's a loophole or intended, but for projects, this is important, begun in 22, but completed in 23, the 179D has the same benefit, which is much greater, $5 square foot now. But you don't need to meet the prevailing wage or Energy Star compliance tests. So you can get the $5 a square foot if you began in 22 and finish in 23. At least that's our interpretation. These rules are new, but currently it looks like there's a little loophole in there. So anybody who's begun in 22, finishing in 23 has a larger benefit without the compliance aspect.
Interesting. But no,
we see a lot of buildings putting a lot of larger buildings with large footprints and flat footprints. We see them doing solar systems. I'm sure you've been involved with that or know more about it than I do, Rick. But if you're putting a solar system on a roof that might be older, which needs to be replaced in 2 or 5 or 10 years, you would replace the roof prior to putting the solar system on, right? Because that makes sense. So we have clients who will do studies where we identify all the accelerated components and put values on the base building components, including the roof, so that when the roof is disposed of in the course of the solar installation, when it's disposed of, you can retire the remaining value of that roof. And one more thing, you mentioned renovations, and that kind of brings up a further point. So our studies, as I said, will allocate many assets in a property to 5, 7, and 15-year property. But the remaining base building stuff, the 27.5-year or 39-year property, still remains. In our studies, in a study with a good provider using strong engineers, we'll break down the base building into many values. Those values can be used then when you, for example, replace the roof, or replace the furnace, or do a renovation, or re-tenant, or any kind of other capital improvements. So in addition to accelerating depreciation, there is the ability to put values, these baseline values in all of these base building components. So you can write off the stuff that winds up in a dumpster at the end of the day. So it's another, kind of side benefit as well. But it can be big. It can be big.
So in some cases, you might even suggest to someone, your roof is 20 years old. It might be time you replace the roof and you add solar panels on, and you could write off 80% of that, or whatever it would be.
Well, if they've had a study done prior to, right, the dismissal of that roof, yeah. So So any kind of renovation. So for your clients, this is an important point. For your clients, well, let me give you an example. I'm thinking of a Porsche dealership that we just did, and so Porsche requires that its stores keep very updated to the latest standards and colors and textures and whatever. So this Porsche dealership, we had done a study on it back in 2013, I think it was, and we accelerated about $1 million of the original building to these shorter depreciable lives. Well, in 2000 and I guess it was 20, I think, they did a major renovation. They do them every 7 to 8 years, right? And so in this renovation, a couple things happened. Number one, we were able to look at the new investment of, I think it was around $4 million, and move another $1 million into shorter depreciable lives with 100% bonus depreciation. It was all written off. But in addition to that, because we had done a study with great detail back in 13, we had the values of all of these pieces that had come out of service. So the second effect is that we were able to go through the construction drawings, the demo drawings, and so forth. We were able to retire the values we established back in 13. Now they were 7 years into a 39-year life, so they didn't get the full value, but they got a lot. And the third thing is we looked at the new investment and it accelerated that as well. So it becomes a multi-dimensional study. If the first baseline study had not been done, the asset disposal piece would not have applied. So the point, if your listeners are doing major renovations to properties, it might make sense to do a study in advance to identify the values of the pieces that might be coming out of service. So in addition to accelerating depreciation, because you can go back and do studies on properties that have been owned from the past. In addition to that, you'd have the ability to retire these values, and that can be big, can be really big. What's the value of the doors, the windows, the facade, the roof, the HVAC components, floorings in an apartment building. It might be bathtubs and sinks and toilets and fixtures and so forth. So if major renovation is coming up, this should be considered.
So you mentioned multifamily. So I want to go back to that a little, because in multifamily now you have a lot of these projects that are going into like opportunity zones. They're called affordable housing. They have workforce housing. They have 40B housing. They have everything under the sun housing, nowadays. But it's all based on like an affordable or a grant type program, where the government is involved in some form of fashion in the subsidy of it. And how do you take benefits of tax deductions in those situations?
So I'm not an expert in OZs, but I can tell you that the fact that they're promoting a long-term hold works really well for cost segregation, right? And I don't know of any conflict between them. We've done many studies and many OZs, and I'm not aware of any conflict between the tax benefit. So that's good. On affordable housing, the 40B stuff doesn't affect us at all. Doesn't affect the study at all, I should say, because a 40B study is simply providing a certain element of affordable housing based on local income or whatever. All we care about is what is the cost to build the building, what is the total of hard costs and soft costs, and from that we will apply our depreciation rules to accelerate depreciation. So that's not going to be a factor. However, if there's a direct government subsidy to a project, then that would come off the top. We could not give you basis and credit and accelerated depreciation on that portion that is government sponsored.
Okay, well, that answers that question. But now we'll move on to the office space.
Sure.
Because office is, they had a lot of, they probably got hit hardest from the pandemic, but
Hmm.
they did get some kind of, government funds to carry them through. The issue is that even though they get that, it's still now a struggle because now you don't have employees coming back to work. How do they take advantage of all of that where they have a lease for 10 years? They can't bring all their employees back. They have to bring, maybe it's a hybrid situation, so they don't really need all that space anymore.
Hmm.
Can they get a tax benefit? Can
Yeah, not through my service. However, it would be important to know that there are rules now in place that the first thing, cost segregation and all of these depreciation rules can be applied retrospectively. So if in 2018 you spent $2 million to move into 60 State Street, just as an example, if you weren't aware or your CPA was not aware, then you should know now that there's a rule called QIP, Qualified Improvement Property. And please listeners, write that down. You don't need a cost seg study. You don't have to pay a dime. But QIP says that any existing building that's not residential that invests in interior improvements that are not structural. So typical TI stuff is eligible for 15-year treatment and 100% bonus depreciation. So if I spend $2 million painting and recarpeting and that State Street back in from 2018 through 2022, I get 100% bonus depreciation on that, which is amazing, and not enough people are aware of that. And that is for both the property owner and for the tenant. Whoever spends the money can get that benefit. Again, it's non-residential only, so it'll be commercial, and it is interior and non-structural. It can't be new construction, but interior and non-structural. All the TI stuff that you're familiar with can be written off 100%, and you can go back and pick that up. So it sounds, if you're in that position, it sounds like a good time to take advantage.
so that's not just on multifamily or office. That's on any
I'm
type
sorry,
of
no. So,
property.
so yeah, so multifamily would not qualify.
Oh, okay.
Multifamily cannot take advantage of QIP. Any other commercial can. And yeah,
So it'd be like office and retail and
office, retail, lab,
yeah.
whatever kind of property type. Yeah. So when it first came out, QIP was identified back in 2018. It came with the 15-year treatment, but not bonus depreciation. So you didn't get that big bang in the first year. But that came along with the CARES Act through COVID. The CARES Act came out with another set of tax rules, and in keeping with trying to keep money in the hands of property owners and businesses, they then allowed retroactively back to 2018. They allowed property owners and tenants to take 100% bonus depreciation. So the other part of that is there's no need to amend tax returns to do that. You can do it with the simple IRS form called 3150 and 3115. And so I hope people out there are that have cash flow issues or don't want to pay taxes, will take advantage. And again, you don't need a cost seg study to do that. That's a swipe of the pen.
So like I said at the beginning, there's so many changes to the IRS rules on an annual basis. In 2023, have you seen anything that has changed that would be beneficial for a lot
Yeah,
of property owners?
the two things that affect us in terms of commercial real estate are, number one, the bonus depreciation has gone from 100% to 80%. So remember that CVS example, instead of getting 2 million the first year, you would get 1.6 the first year. So still, very lucrative. And also with the energy program. So they've based on the policies and the and the behavior that they want, prevailing wage and Energy Star are going to be mandated. So the prevailing wage is certainly to boost union labor, right? And Energy Star makes sense. Energy Star is a certification program to make sure the properties are built as energy efficiently as possible.
Well, there's a lot of information to take in there, Bill. But it's all good information, valuable, very valuable information. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. We're talking with Bill Cusato. He's the Senior Director at Source Advisors. And anyone that doesn't want to, if anyone wants to contact you and they go to sourceadvisors.com, can they get your information?
Yes, they can. I'll just give right now too. So my number is 978-869-5622. Call me anytime. And my email address is bill.cusato@sourceadvisors.com. And I hope to hear from you. So I would say half my time is spent with property owners with questions about does this apply and what's the best way to handle this situation or that. Or I'm considering buying this building, and I just wanted to know what the cash flow impact would be if I bought this building, and what kind of yield would I get, and what would that mean in terms of first year benefit and lifetime benefit. So I spend most of my time answering questions from CPAs and from property owners. And shout out to any CPAs listening in. We work with thousands of CPAs and hundreds of CPA firms. So they're often our point of referral, but I also work directly with property owners as well.
And cost segregation studies would not cost a property owner to have it done.
Well, yeah, I get two kids in graduate school, Rick. I got to charge something. We do. We do charge. The fee is typically less than 1% of the benefit.
Okay.
So if I gave you on a CVS $2 million in benefit, the fee on that might be $6,500 would be a typical fee. So the fees do not scale up direct. There's no direct scale of the benefit. So it's not a linear thing. So a CVS that were 3 times the size wouldn't cost 3 times as much. It would cost a little bit more. So our average fee is probably in the ballpark of 60. About $8,500. That ranges from lab buildings of hundreds of thousands of square feet, and down to a guy that owns some triple deckers in Somerville.
Great. Well, we're talking with Bill Cusato of Source Advisors, and anyone that wants to take check out Cost Segregation, contact Bill. And you can also see this on YouTube, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the New England Real Estate Journal website. And again, thank you, Bill. And then at the end of this video, you'll also have all of Bill's contact information as well.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And good luck. Good luck. Keep things going, okay? You do a great job for our industry. It's amazing what you've done and then what you continue to do. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. I love when I can get complimented at the end of the show.
Yeah.
It makes my day.
Well, you made mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.